welcome back to another portfolio update video. In this one, I've made a few moves in the account since my last update, and I'm also looking at some new potential stocks that I'm interested in buying before the end of the year. So what are those? What are the moves that I've made? That's what we're going to go over in today's video. If you're new here, my name is Sheldon, and I like to make completely transparent videos talking about how I invest in the stock market. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you're somebody that is interested in building your own portfolio, learning how to analyze stocks, learning about the market in general, then subscribe to the channel because that is what we talk about here, and join me on this crazy journey that we call investing. Also, I want to mention that I am not an expert. I'm just some guy that likes to invest in the stock market. I've been doing this for around 5 years now and educating myself on it for a lot longer than that. But definitely do not go and buy stocks just because you might see them in this video. As an investor, you have to do your own due diligence. So don't just buy stocks blindly because you might see them on YouTube. You know, if you ever want to be actually successful long-term in the market, you have to learn the process yourself. So that's what I'm trying to teach here on this channel. And with all that being said, let's dive right into the accounts. We're currently sitting at around $81,194 in the account since our last update video. I think we had around 78, so it's just continued to be a really good end of the year, and it's just been an insane year in the stock market. Congratulations to anybody that's been invested throughout this year because, you know, it's years like this where it really does pay off. We're actually up around 64% in total in the account now, and one of the most recent moves that I've made, if you've watched the channel before, you know that I have been talking about selling a little bit of my Palantir position, and I ended up doing it. I sold around 25 shares. We originally had 160, and I sold them, if I look at my orders here, we sold 25 Palantir shares at $73, and I also promise you this is not a Palantir video, but just to update you guys on the moves that I've been making, we sold 25 for $73, so that gave us, let's just clear that, 25 shares times 73, that gave us around $1,800 to play with, so we got a little bit of cash that I haven't redeployed into the market yet. So that's kind of why I've been looking at new stocks to buy, and there's a couple interesting ones that I want to get into. I guess I did buy some VFV. That is in a separate account than what my stocks are in. That's in a shorter term account that's basically for a first home savings in Canada, if you're aware of what a first home savings account is. So that's just S&P 500. You know, it's always good to continue to dollar cost average into some S&P 500 ETFs. That is honestly a really core part of my strategy when it comes to investing, and I think it should be for pretty much everybody else out there, just because it's really good to mitigate risk in your portfolio. So by VFV, by VOO, you know, it really doesn't matter. They're basically the same. Just any S&P 500 ETF, I think it's a good idea to have a portion of your portfolio in that. So, you know, I cycled some of those gains, or no, that was actually a contribution. I added $1,000 into my account a while ago. That was just sitting there. So it was that $1,000 that I put into the S&P. So, but the gains from Palantir, I haven't actually done anything with those yet. So maybe I'll shave the position even more because the stock that I've been looking at buying is very interesting right now. And you know, in this video, we're going to do something a little bit different. There's this like stock checklist that sometimes I kind of just go through when I'm researching stocks or before I buy something. So we're going to go through this just relatively briefly. You know, we're not going to go too deep into the stock. But basically, the stock that I want to talk about in today's video and the one that I have been interested in buying is AMD. AMD is looking like a pretty solid deal right now. Let's look at the 1 year. So obviously they've had a pretty bad crash from its peak anyway. On a 1 year basis, it's down almost 9%. 5 years, it's still up over 200%, but it's had a pretty chunky 5 years here. And basically, if you don't know what AMD is, they create chips for computers. It's basically NVIDIA's main competitor in the market. They are building GPUs for artificial intelligence, for data centers. They have different segments. They have a client segment, which is like a business and productivity segment. They have a gaming segment, which is huge. They build chips for Sony and the PS4 and 5. Actually, I don't know if it was in the PS4, but I'm pretty sure all the chips in all of the different editions of the PS5 are all from AMD. Obviously, Microsoft is NVIDIA, but basically this is NVIDIA's their main competitors, and obviously it's not the leader in the market. If you're aware of NVIDIA, they have obviously taken the biggest market share in this industry compared to AMD. But they're still, at the edge of innovation. They still build chips that are just as good. NVIDIA just happened to come out the winner here. And the market cap of AMD right now is $206 billion, where if we compare that to NVIDIA is trading at $3.23 trillion. So the market cap of NVIDIA is way bigger. And I believe if we pull up this chart, so NVIDIA was worth around $200 billion almost 5 years ago. So right around here on NVIDIA's market cap is where AMD is trading at today. And I mean, look at what happened to NVIDIA since then. Crazy. But I also kind of think, you missed the boat on NVIDIA. That bus is gone. It's like running out of gas. So you want to hop on a new vehicle, a new mode of transportation that has some gas in it still. And I think AMD is loaded up and ready to go here. And I guess let's just dive into it. So looking at this, one of the main things that I like to think about when I'm researching stocks is if the stock makes sense for my portfolio. I think this is huge because you don't want to get too overweight on a certain industry or a certain type of stock. You want that diversification. It's kind of what I was talking about earlier with, continuing to always dollar cost average into the S&P 500. I think that's very important. It's something that you're going to hear me say on this channel a lot. I think diversification is really good. At one point, I had my portfolio go down like 50% and stay there for like a year and a half. So I learned the hard way that diversification is a very good thing. So if we look at my account, basically, like, obviously I do have a lot of tech stocks, okay? And this is one of the reasons that I'm thinking of selling a little bit more Palantir. But Palantir, like, if you look at the technology sector, then there's also you can diversify within technology, right? Like, Palantir is obviously a software company. They build AI, they build the large language models. They aren't building the hardware, though. So Palantir, even though, yes, it's a tech stock, it's a software play. I also have Meta, which they build data centers, but at the core of it, like, yes, they're a technology company, but they're a digital advertising business. That's how they make most of their money, right? Like, they have social media. So it's also a little bit of a different play. Google and Meta, they are kind of similar because they both make a majority of their revenue from digital advertising. But Google is also a cloud business, so they also have data centers. But they don't actually make chips. Excuse me. Meta also doesn't actually make chips. Apple does make chips, but they're very, like, proprietary, obviously, and it's just for their own machines. So, and I guess I'm trying to make a case here where having AMD in the portfolio does make sense, and maybe I'm trying to shoehorn it, but I actually think there is a little bit of a gap in my portfolio of just semiconductors. Like, yes, obviously I have a lot of big tech stocks, but when it comes to just general semiconductor manufacturing, specifically for artificial intelligence, which is obviously a huge market, I kind of don't really have that. And then from there, it's JP Morgan, Nike, Caterpillar. Those aren't semiconductor companies as well. So looking at AMD, I think it could make sense to add that to the portfolio because I still have the diversification of, having VOO, which is a major part of the account, and VFV and a couple other ETFs, but I don't think I'd be too under-diversified if I add AMD into the account at maybe the same level of Nike. Nike is one of the big bets that I'm making going into the new year, and I'll probably make a whole other video on Nike because I haven't made a video on it in a while. But Nike's one of the newest stocks that I've ended up buying, and I'm pretty sure, I'm comfortable with the size that the position is, and I'm pretty sure if I started a new position in AMD, obviously I only have a certain amount of cash in the account right now, but I'd probably put all of it towards AMD and then look to build it out to at least the same size position as Nike. Because the actual principal investment in Nike is way bigger than what I had in, Palantir, for example. But I guess this is just me. This is what I'm thinking about when I look at new stocks, right? This is the new stock checklist. Does this make sense for my portfolio? That's mainly pointing towards, how I'm thinking about the diversification when it comes to the account. You don't want to be too underweight. You don't want to be too overweight in certain sectors or industries. And you have to think about, you can't just own one stock. You can't just own 10 oil and gas stocks, because if oil and gas goes down, you're going to hate your life for a little bit there. But so that's one way that I think about it. It's one of the first things that I think about as well, because if it doesn't check that box, then it's kind of pointless to go further into the research on that specific stock, because, why go further into it if it doesn't make sense in the first place? So I think it could make sense, at least to start it out as a smaller position. So that box, check. Let's move on to the next one. What's the current overall market conditions? Pretty unreal, I guess. Obviously, we're at the top of a bull market right now. Let me quickly pull up the S&P 500 here. Or I guess if we just go home, S&P 500. So I talk about this a lot, but obviously we've been in a crazy bull market. So overall market conditions, there's nothing too crazy right now. Interest rates are slowly tapering down. Even though they're inflated, they're still coming down. In terms of, let's pull up the fear and greed index as well. Give me 1 second here. So investor sentiment is leaning towards greed right now, but it's not too out of whack here. You're not looking at extreme greed, which you can get to, which is pretty much, I think the last time we were there was probably at the height of the COVID bubble, or if we go back to the S&P, it was right around here. You would have probably seen extreme greed on the fear and greed index in this area. So the overall market conditions are pretty good. You could argue that it's trading a little rich right now. Historical PE ratios, I think the S&P is trading at around a 29 right now. I don't know if this shows, or 30. Yeah, okay. 29.30, which is historically a little high, right? But, that's nothing too crazy. So overall market conditions, it's obviously better to invest your money when it's crashing, but in this case, when you look at the specific stock, it's had a pretty rough year, so it's not a bad time to invest in this company, even though the general market conditions are pretty good. And I'd also say it's always good to continue to average into positions no matter what the market conditions are. But it's just a good idea to have a sense for where you are in the market right now. Are you at the height of a bull run? Are you in a crash? What's going on there? Is this FOMO? I'm pretty sure looking at this stock chart, it's clear that this is not. Maybe if we were looking at Palantir, or maybe if if we pull up Nvidia right now, even Nvidia's kind of come off its highs a little bit. That's the market cap. But if we just look at the price, maybe on a 1 year, I think maybe you could make an argument that buying Nvidia here is a little bit driven by FOMO, but I think Nvidia's in this kind of chill phase, and it's going to be in this chill phase for a little while. Maybe while hopefully competitors like AMD start to catch up and build out their, customer base and fulfill a lot of their orders. So I don't think it's FOMO, and there's not tons of people screaming that you need to get into AMD. It's gone down since the beginning of the year. So check on that box as well. Not FOMO. What industry is it? Semiconductors, technology, industry conditions. Tech stocks are doing really good right now. Competition, Nvidia, that is one of probably the biggest risks with getting into AMD, right? Because your competitor is the king, basically. So you're kind of betting that Nvidia is not going to completely take over the market, even though they already kind of have, but I believe that it's an and world. It's not, this or that, especially in with technology like Sony and their PS4, they got to maintain that contract. The revenues have gone down a little bit. Like, we'll dive further into their financials in a second here, but just competition is a little scary with this one, because Nvidia it's the clear winner when it comes to hardware for AI. Nvidia was the first people selling shovels during the gold rush, but that doesn't mean that more people can't come and sell their own shovels, and the gold rush can last a long time. So obviously, competition is something huge to keep in mind with AMD. Competing against Nvidia is not ideal, but I do think that there is a case to be made that it's not the end of the world, and there is room in the market, and obviously Nvidia has the most market share in the industry, but I think AMD can carve a little piece of the pie out, and especially if they continue to be as innovative as they are, and continue to execute on their mission. I think there's room for AMD, obviously. Like, that's capitalism in a nutshell. So, competition, it's a good idea to have a handle on the competition, but, those are some more general, broad, overall market things that I look at. And then if all of those boxes you can successfully check that you have researched, then I move on to further, more company-specific research things like financial metrics and business analytics. What's the mission? Who's the team? What's the story? What problem do they solve? All these things can, I see this as being drilling further down into your research. So if we go back to AMD, what are the financials looking like? So earnings per share, we're at $1.13. PE ratio currently is at 112, and forward PE has come down a lot. And I believe this is from a forecast of AMD expecting that they're going to raise their earnings per share a lot, which would be huge, right? If they can come in, and I believe like there's a forecast here, and obviously this is just a forecast like coming from analysts, but so you can't take it as gospel, but it's good to look at it, and they're expecting a 532 earnings per share growth percentage up to, and that's full year, so $3.35. So that's obviously going to bring the PE ratio down, which would be huge if they can execute on gaining a higher earnings per share number, because, that just comes from a little bit of growth and a little bit of making the business more efficient. And so that, like, if you can get in the stock now, and then after you buy the stock, the company comes out with earnings. I think they come out January 28th. So we'll see on January 28th where they come in with EPS. But if they're able to raise EPS by like a whole $2, that's going to be very good for the stock price, and it could potentially even snowball effect from there. So yeah, that's they're also looking at $24 billion in revenue trailing 12 months. They have had a little bit of rocky revenue, pretty steady growth from 2019, really good growth rates actually, holy. And then in 2023, they went down a little bit, but then their trailing 12-month is already back up to around 10%. And I believe they've had 5 quarters of consistent revenue growth. So a little bit obviously unsteady. Like, if you look, I'll just pull up this. Like, they have brought their revenue down slightly, but it's looking like they could come in and beat revenue again in their next earnings report. And so if we look at where their revenue is really coming from, I believe in here there is a breakdown from each segment right here. So their data center revenue, that came in, this is just the quarter end of Q3 2024, so their most recent earnings of $3.5 billion, client $1.8 billion, net revenue from gaming, which, I think their gaming segment has come down, down 29% on a quarterly basis. So if they can get their gaming going a little bit again, I believe it actually dropped pretty bad. Yeah, their gaming segment down 69% year over year. But I mean, if they can offset that with some crazy data center growth, that'll also be pretty good. And I believe their outlook is to actually grow revenues. So their Q4 revenue outlook is $7.5 billion, which would be, I think, a record quarter from them. If we look quarterly, 6.8, 5.8, 5.4, 6.1. Yeah, if they're guiding to have a $7.5 billion quarter, then they're gonna, and if they hit that, that could be pretty good for the stock price as well if they come out and hit strong in 2025 and have a record quarter. It's just looking like a good deal, I'll be honest. With forward PE coming down, with the fundamentals of the company being pretty solid, they're already a very established company. They have lots of CPUs and GPUs out there. If they can build their customer base a little bit more, and even if they can get some contracts with somebody like, a cloud provider like Amazon or Google or Microsoft, probably, Microsoft is kind of in bed with NVIDIA a little bit, I would assume. So I don't know about that, but... And then there's also a lot more research that I have to do here. I kind of just started really looking at this thing. Obviously, I haven't actually bought it yet. So if you guys have any suggestions on AMD, or if anybody holds AMD, then please share what your bull thesis on the stock is. Because I might be missing some stuff here. I don't know. I kind of just started doing some research and digging into their financial reports, their numbers, their everything. But I do think it could be a really good add to the portfolio, and because we shaved a little bit of the gains off Palantir, I am looking to cycle those back into something that is looking like a good deal, and AMD at the moment seems like to be that stock. So, I got to do some more research, but I will likely start a position in this one. That's not for sure. It's just looking like a good deal. So, to move on to another one that I've been looking at, and this one came from a comment, actually, that I got on a video. Somebody mentioned this stock, and I've never heard of this stock before, but it's an interesting company. It's a very small company, unprofitable, risky, so, the potential for gains here is pretty high. It's going to be a very longer, like a way longer outlook when you're looking into small cap stocks that are unprofitable. And that stock is Archer Aviation, ticker symbol ACHR. It's currently trading for $8.87. In the last year, they have really had a crazy spike. Like since November 4th, they went up from $3.24. So this is a really cool company. I'll give them that. They basically create like eVTOLs, which is, let me pull up their website here just to show you basically what the company does. But they create like, it's electric aircraft, and I think the main market for it is like taxi services. So it's a crazy idea. But I do like the fact that it's like a new segment almost, because if you look at something like Tesla, like what happened with Tesla, they essentially created their own market and then fucking took over. Like they just, and so that could happen with a stock like this, where it's a new mode of transportation. It's electric, so it's obviously the whole industry and sector of transportation is moving in that direction. And I don't really know much about electric planes. I'm guessing that the amount of charge capacity and duration is probably a limiting factor there, because I think they're specifically targeting only like a 20 to 50 mile routes, so to save traffic time. So it's not like cross country, like, massive airtime or like super long trips in your airplane. So but it's a good place to start though, it's a smaller, more niche market, but if you can actually get adoption here, this is the type of stock that if you get in now and then in 5 years from now, they actually are executing on a taxi service and they have multiple airplanes, or VTOLs or whatever you want to call them, in service, making money, then, you're going to make a lot of money on that stock. Like that could be 1,000% plus stock. Currently, they have made no money. They just burn cash right now. If we look at this, so I don't know if I can see. I guess just look at this, because 2023 they lost 450 million, 2022 317 million. So they're losing hundreds of millions of dollars a year right now, and they make literally nothing. They make nada. So these are the riskier plays, right? Like you could put, if you threw $1,000 in this stock, like you could make a lot of money in the long term, which is that you have to have that expectation for a stock like this. Is that it's going to take years. There's a lot of FAA regulations and hoops that a company like this is going to have to jump through, and especially when it comes to a lot of the safety regulations, that they have to make sure their aircraft is safe. That's going to take a long time. I don't know how long they've been around for. Again, I've just kind of started to do initial research. They've been public since 2020. But they're valued at $3.8 billion, which is not like a super small, like it's obviously still a small cap company, but they haven't turned a single dollar in profit. I believe the aircraft is almost developed from the research that I've done, not fully developed. And I also don't think they have regulations, or they haven't completed all the regulatory paperwork that they need to get done in order to actually execute on the mission of the company, which is to have the aircrafts in service, transporting people around. So that's one of them, though. It's a cool company, and it's things like this that you do have that really big potential to grow. So to go to another small cap that is kind of interesting, and it's sort of in the same world, actually, but let's go and hit QuantumScape. So QuantumScape is, I guess you can see this chart is not ideal, and at the height of the COVID bubble, they were worth $114, and now it's worth under $5. So I guess you could consider this a penny stock. That's not what you want to see. And again, if we scroll down, you can see that they've only ever lost money. And they've lost a lot of money. In 2020, they lost $1.6 billion, which is crazy. And then, they're over the $400 million a year mark. But I believe they have a little bit more cash. If we look at their balance sheets, 840 mil. I don't know. But this is another small one. They build, I think it's like a new battery technology. They have a cool website. Let's also pull up their website here. And this is these are ones that I've definitely not done as much research on, and I'm definitely more interested in investing in AMD, but because AMD is like more so an established brand. Obviously they already are, they make money. These are like the longer term, more risky stocks that you can do pretty good on, but they're just interesting to look at. And for anybody out there that's interested, here's a couple of growth stocks that you could put in your portfolio that, if they start to turn a profit, then you're going to do pretty good. But they're working on some type of new battery cell technology that is like a more efficient and higher energy density cell for batteries. So if a company like this ever got, a contract with somebody like a Tesla, or even if it got if electric aircrafts really take off, then, a battery technology like this could really get widely adopted. I don't actually know how well the technology works. Like, I have no idea about, I know how basic batteries work, but that's one of the problems that I have with investing in things like this, is that it's when I struggle to understand the technology, that's a little bit rough. Like, it's definitely outside of my realm of competence, is kind of what you might hear in the investment world when it comes to talking about investing in what you know. And I would say the general rule of thumb for buying stocks is invest in things that you understand. So, new innovative battery technology, you might only want to actually buy it if you're somebody that knows that it's a good product. Or else it's like there's a little bit of gambling there, I would say, an aspect of it anyway, and which is okay. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, and I think there's definitely room in your portfolio to allocate a certain percentage towards things like that, because the payoff can be really big. But this is just another cool one that I've been looking at. Again, haven't done too much research into it. I don't think that they have actually completed, they haven't created the cell yet, the actual battery cell. But if they did and they implemented it and it turned out to be a way more efficient battery and a way higher energy density cell. Like, it's things like that that are really going to take off, right? So those are just some things that I've been looking at. That is everything that I wanted to talk about in today's video. To sum it up, I did end up selling some Palantir shares, just took a little bit of shave off the top, and I'm looking to cycle that back into some new investments, which is what I've been doing with a lot of my time, is researching some new things to buy. I also did buy a little bit of S&P 500 ETFs, which I always recommend you should do. And yeah, let me know if there's any stocks that have been on your watch list lately or anything that you've been looking into. I'd be interested to know what stocks you're looking at. As always, I wish you the best of luck on your investment journey. Peace.